Fellas, UFC 302 was last night, and there's a lot of fights that need to be made, from title fights to #1 contender fights, just bangers between fighters that feature on this card. So I'm going to be matchmaking every single fighter that won and lost on the main card, because like I said, there's a lot of fights that need to be made, a lot of bangers that could potentially be made, and we'll go straight in there with the first fight, which was Randy Brown versus Zaleski dos Santos. Now, we'll start with Zaleski dos Santos. Didn't get it done against Randy Brown. It was a close and fun striking matchup with a bit of grappling in there, but obviously fell short when it came to the decision. For Zaleski dos Santos, I want to see him against Chaos Williams. I want to see Zaleski dos Santos against Chaos Williams. He's lost to Randy Brown, and so has Chaos Williams, but Chaos Williams has picked up 2 wins. He's coming off a great knockout recently as well, and I think Chaos Williams versus Zaleski dos Santos would be such an interesting striking matchup. Like I said, Chaos has also lost to Randy Brown, but he's managed to pick up a few wins from there, and Zaleski dos Santos ain't out of it either. Like I said, in his last fight before the fight with Randy Brown, he's able to go to a draw with Rinat, so I think Chaos Williams versus Zaleski dos Santos, that would be an absolute banger on the feet, and I think the winner can definitely, continue to get some high, big wins in the unranked area of the welterweight division. So Zaleski dos Santos versus Chaos Williams, I think that would be an absolute banger, to be honest with you. And then for Randy Brown, the winner, Randy Brown, I think he deserves a ranked fight now. He's won, I think he's won 7 out of his last 8, and that only loss is coming to Jack Della Maddalena. I know he's lost to a couple of the top, ranked opponents already. I think he's lost to Bilal Muhammad, obviously, like I said, Jack Della Maddalena, but I think it's time to give him a big fight. I think it's time to give Randy Brown a big fight, a ranked fight. Well, I say a big fight, but a fight that could potentially push him into the rankings. So I'm going to do Randy Brown versus the winner of Kelvin Gastelum and Daniel Rodriguez. Now, Kelvin Gastelum and Daniel Rodriguez, they're going to be fighting at UFC Saudi Arabia in a few weeks' time, and I'd love to see Randy Brown face the winner, because Gastelum and Rodriguez, they're both in that area where they're both only like 1 or 2 wins away from potentially breaking into those welterweight rankings, and I feel like the winner of that should face Randy Brown, and the winner of Randy Brown and Gastelum Rodriguez, I think from there, should get into the rankings of the welterweight division. And even the fight is really fun as well. You've got Kelvin Gastelum, an absolute tank, versus Randy Brown. That would be fun to see as well. Same for the Daniel Rodriguez fight, and it's also a step up from Randy Brown as well. Perfect fight to see whereabouts Randy Brown is compared to the rest of the division, and I feel like that would overall be a really fun fight. So Randy Brown, I think he should face the winner of Gastelum Rodriguez after UFC Saudi Arabia. Hopefully that fight can be made by the end of the year, and if he can beat the winner of Gastelum Rodriguez, then that's where we can start seeing Randy Brown face ranked opponents. So that's for that fight. The next fight, we had Alex Morono versus Nico Price. You know what? I'm just going to say double retirement. I have no interest in seeing these guys fight again. I know they've had a semi-decent career in the UFC, and, they've had quite a long career, but that performance from both of them was not great. They were super slow. The reaction speed was atrocious. They looked like they was operating on about 5%. I don't know what was going on there. It looked like 2 drunk uncles at a barbecue. I don't even know if that would be Bellator worthy. I was going to say send them to Bellator, but I'm not even sure Bellator would be taking applications for Nico Price and Alex Morono. So, honestly, no interest in seeing them in the UFC, and if I had to control it, I would say retire. Maybe give them a bit of a bag so they don't, I know they've got kids to feed and whatever, but after a performance like that, he had no space being anywhere near the main card. It should have been Jelton Almeida versus Romanov staying on the main card, but it is what it is. So for Nico Price versus Alex Morono, just double retirement, man. I don't really have interest in them in the UFC. They're not UFC worthy anymore, even though they've had decent careers. So I'm just going to go double retirement for those two. Then we had Kevin Holland versus McCall, one of the more interesting fights on the card. Kevin Holland was able to submit McCall and break the dude's arm. McCall, he's going to be out for a while. I still don't know if it was actually an arm break or a dislocation. If it's a dislocation, maybe he'll be back sooner than we think. But if he actually broke his arm, he's going to be out for a long time. So it's kind of hard to guess how what state the division is going to be in when he comes back. But I would like to see McCall against Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva's a great striker, but he's not an elite striker. He lost to Sharputin Magomedov. He lost to Alex Pereira, but he was able to survive them. Bruno Silva is extremely tough, and he's coming off that loss to Chris Weidman, but let's be honest, it ain't a loss, right? He was an eye poke that I don't know what the referee was thinking in that fight. I feel like he kind of got done dirty in that fight with Chris Weidman. So Bruno Silva, I think him versus Macau would be such an interesting matchup because, like I said, maybe Bruno Silva ain't good enough for the top end of the division, but he's still an extremely tough guy, still a great striker, and same for Macau. Macau's also not good enough for the top of the division. He's lost to Kevin Holland. He lost to Michel Becerra. He's lost to some other guys. But I think this would be a super fun striking matchup when Macal's back. So I'm going to say that Bruno Silva versus Macal, I think that would be a great fight. And then for Kevin Holland, now, I don't know what division Kevin Holland is planning on staying at, because I know he said he wants to kind of bump up and down and fight whatever the UFC give him at 170 and 185. But if I picked which division he'd fight in, I'd pick 185. I think he looks much better at 185 than he does at 170. And if I had to put him at someone at 185, I'd do Kevin Holland versus Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is kind of just about breaking the rankings of the middleweight division. He's obviously got really good boxing, really good takedown defense. He's got the KO threat, and he's coming off a loss, but it was a close loss to Brendan Allen. And I feel like he's just about made the middleweight rankings, and Kevin Holland deserves a ranked fight. Like I said, for the past few years, he's been floating around the welterweight rankings, moves up and fights an unranked middleweight, submits him in the first round. He deserves a ranked fight in the middleweight division because he is ranked worthy. I think Holland versus Chris Curtis would be such a good fight as well. Two dangerous strikers right there. You've got Chris Curtis, an amazing boxer, knockout threat, just overall really good combinations, and his takedown defense is on point. And then you've got Holland, another slick striker, who's also really crafty. I think that'll be a really fun fight. I think the build up to that fight would be good as well, because Holland loves to troll, and Chris Curtis can't handle trolls to save his life. So I think Kevin Holland versus Chris Curtis, potential fight night main event, and it is the perfect fight to help Kevin Holland break into the middleweight rankings. And if he loses to Chris Curtis, you know, he can just have fun fights from there. So Holland versus Curtis, that'll be a fun fight. It makes a lot of sense from a career perspective, and I would love to see that fight. And then we have the co-main event, Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. Still can't believe that was only a split decision. Whoever judged that fight and gave a win to Costa needs to be fired and, you know, just sent to Dagestan to fight the bet. I don't know what they need to do, but they need to go away. That was a terrible decision, but Sean Strickland got the win. We'll start with Costa. I think Costa should fight Brendan Allen. I think Paulo Costa should fight Brendan Allen. It's very clear that Costa isn't good enough for the top end of the division. He's got battered by Israel Adesanya. He's lost to Marvin Vettori. He's lost to Robert Whittaker. He's now lost to Sean Strickland. He's lost to a lot of the top guys. And his last win was to Luke Rockhold, and it wasn't even like a dominant win. So even though Costa's able to survive against these guys, we need to give him a little bit of a step down in competition. I want to see Costa versus Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen's kind of on the rise. I know he's also lost to guys like Sean Strickland before as well, but he's on a bit of a streak. Obviously coming off that really good win over Paul Craig in his last fight he had against Chris Curtis. That was very close. It was a little bit too close for my liking, to the point where I'm not sure Allen deserves a big fight from here, but it's the perfect fight. If Allen can go out there and beat Paulo Costa, who, like I said, has been facing the top guys forever, then that can push Brendan Allen straight into that top 5 and potentially get matched in like #1 contender fights. And if Paulo Costa can beat Brendan Allen, fair play, we might be able to see Paulo Costa against the top guys of the division again. So I think it's a fun fight. It's also a completely new style to what Paulo Costa's used to. Like I said, Vettori, Adesanya, Strickland, Whittaker, they're all strikers. Now he's having to face a completely different style to what he's used to in Brendan Allen in a grappler. So that's going to be interesting to see how Costa handles that. I think it'll be a fun fight, and it's a good test for Brendan Allen. So I think Brendan Allen versus Paulo Costa should be the next fight. And then for Sean Strickland, undoubtedly, title shot. Now, I don't know if he's going to be next in line for a title shot, because like I said in multiple videos now, it's been heavily rumoured that UFC 305 is going to be Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis in Perth. And if that is the case, then obviously it can't be Strickland. But Strickland deserves the winner, right? If Adesanya beats Dricus du Plessis, I mean, first of all, Strickland's already beaten Adesanya dominantly before, and he's now come off that win over Paulo Costa, and he arguably beat Dricus du Plessis. And if Dricus wins, I mean, Strickland arguably already deserves the rematch. So for him to go out there and beat Costa on top of that, it 100% should happen. So for Sean Strickland, I want him to fight for the belt next, whether it's against Israel Adesanya, whether it's against Dricus du Plessis, I don't care. He's earned that title shot after he completely shut down Paulo Costa, and I think Strickland should be next in line for the title shot, and that's that fight. And then the main event, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. We'll start with Poirier. What a send-off. What a fight with Islam Makhachev he had there. He put up a fight against a pound-for-pound best, was able to last on the feet, do well on the feet as well, and obviously when it came to grappling, surprised me with how long he survived. For Dustin Poirier, I've got two options. The first one is obviously retire. He hinted that he doesn't know if he wants to go yet. And obviously, leading up to this fight, he heavily hinted towards that it could be his last fight. And if it is, that's a good send-off. You fought in a pay-per-view main event with the whole world backing you against pound-for-pound #1, and you made it a great fight and you give it a good go. You can't be ashamed at that. I think it's a great retirement fight, but I feel like Dustin Poirier still wants 1 or 2 more fights. I feel like if he genuinely wanted to retire, he would have done it there and then. And I've got a feeling that that's not the last time we're going to be seeing Dustin Poirier. So if we are going to see Dustin Poirier again, it needs to be a fun fight. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje number 3. The 2 fights that they've had have been absolute bangers. Poirier was able to finish Gaethje the first time. Gaethje was able to finish Poirier the second time. They're both coming off finish losses. Late 2024, potentially 2025, pay-per-view core or main event, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, maybe for a double retirement because I'm not sure how long Gaethje's going to be around, but that would be violence. We've seen it twice before and I want to see it again. I think both of their title aspirations are over now, so for Dustin Poirier, either retire and call it quits, or not really call it quits, but just end your legacy into the sunset. If not, face Justin Gaethje in what will be an absolute banger. And then for Islam Makhachev, some people have said he wants to go up to 170. I wouldn't mind seeing Islam at 170, but I don't think he deserves it yet because he hasn't cleared out the division. Like I said multiple times, if you want to get a belt in a different weight class, I feel like you got to clear out your division, and he hasn't done that yet. The only top guys in the division that he's beaten is Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier so far. So for Islam Makhachev, there's only one name, and it's Arman Tsarukyan. I mean, they had a fight before, it was super competitive, and Islam, honestly, it's that thing to say that Arman Tsarukyan has a chance against Islam, because Islam, he looked very beatable in that Poirier fight. And Arman stylistically is a much more difficult fight for Islam than Poirier. He's also a great wrestler. He's the first proper wrestler Islam's faced in this division at the highest level. He's come off a good win over Charles Oliveira, who's Arman Tsarukyan. I mean, this was supposed to be the fight for this card, but obviously Arman Tsarukyan wanted more time. So Islam versus Tsarukyan, I think that should be next in line for a pay-per-view main event. I think that's a great fight. It's a competitive fight. And yeah, I'd love to see that. But that is my matches after UFC 302. Let me know your thoughts on these matches and if you would change anything around, if you'd have changed any of the fights. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.